Yeah.
Excellent. So yeah, I got our Twitter handles below our faces, so that if anybody wants to follow us, you do some streamings. Actually, let's just do a proper intro. I'm curious to hear, why you're here, what's your background, how you got into coding.
Sure. So I'll give you the elevator pitch. My name is Brandon Roberts. You can follow me on Twitter at Brandon T. Roberts. I work at Narwhal, which is a consulting company where we uh, teach large companies how to build like large applications at scale. Also a maintainer on the NgRx project where we um, it's a set of reactive libraries for Angular that's built on top of primarily on top of RxJS.
And what
And like you
is
said, if you follow me on
yeah.
Twitter, I tweet a lot of gifs and I have a lot of fun there also. So just be forewarned that the gifs will be flying.
Well, we appreciate the warning too as well. That's some people don't know what to expect from Twitter and what they're going to get when they follow individuals. But I
Mm-hmm.
actually was just going to ask, what do you mean by like what is reactive programming? Because maybe some people on the call like they do JavaScript, but they don't know exactly what that means.
Yeah, so reactive programming to me is kind of is a like a shift in the normal programming that we're used to, where you're uh, calling commands or you're performing these actions, and then you kind of constantly have to pull or check to see if certain data is ready or if something has happened or if some event has been triggered that you need to perform some task against. Reactive programming is a flip of that, so it uses more of a push-based approach to where you listen for changes, and when those changes happen, you automatically get them as a subscriber to those events. And RxJS provide what we use in RxJS provides APIs to allow you to use those reactive patterns and build on top of those in a standardized API, as opposed to, like I said, you having a poll where there's something that's been updated, or in the case of Angular applications, you rely on their change detection system to let you to link like your components to the templates to know when things are updated. So uh, to me, it's more of a push based approach as opposed to a pull based approach, or what a lot of people are used to.
So that's interesting. So is it like WebSockets? Like so I understand like subscription WebSockets. Like
Mhm.
is there a difference between that, or are we talking about the same technology?
Uh, it's similar because you could use a WebSocket. RxJS promotes using the observer pattern and using observable. So a WebSocket could be something that you observe for changes, or you wrap a WebSocket inside of an observable so that other people can consume those messages that are coming out of a WebSocket, or even PubSub would be another example of something that's more push based, and you could, like I said, wrap an observable around some PubSub service and use it as your primary API to for your consumers to listen to changes, as opposed to everybody having to subscribe to the PubSub or WebSocket directly. So they're similar in that way, but the RxJS and observables is more of a standalone thing, because you can use, like I said, you can use WebSockets with RxJS. You can use PubSub. You can turn promises. You can wrap promises in observables and turn them into streams, even though they're only give you that value once. So
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, and I'm sure we'll get into way more detail about that in a moment too, as well. I'm curious in the chat though if everybody's here. I know we got some people representing the South. We also have another person from Huntsville as well in the chat.
okay.
Um,
Yeah, see, they say a war eagle. See, this is where the issues come in. See, I live in Alabama, but okay, I lived here long enough to say I'm from Alabama, but I'm a Tennessee transplant, so I'm go Vols. You can say war eagle, and that's okay. You can say roll tide, but I'm Tennessee Volunteers over here. So yeah,
Yeah. And I think
yeah.
some people might be confused because I know we have some UK people representing in the chat too as well who are silent. We're talking about football,
Oh,
but
yes.
we're actually talking about American football. So this sort of banter that's happening right now is very similar to like football over there in Europe as well. So
Hmm.
yeah,
It's
sports.
like pick your favorite two teams that are close to each other, and you got the same thing. You have people on one side or one deeply invested in one side or the other.
Yeah, I'm from Florida, so we had the Gators and the Knowles. So I was
Yeah.
a Knowles fan growing up, but my brother was a Gator fan, this diehard Gator fan, and I'm just like,
Oh
why?
wow, that sounds rough.
Yeah,
Especially when like you're in the same house and you like two total, not totally different teams, but
yeah.
there's a built-in rivalry there.
But yeah, he actually is a transplant into. He lives in Tennessee as well, just south of
Hmm.
Nashville. So he actually goes to Vols games to go see the Gators.
Okay.
So yeah,
Yeah,
football.
I remember. I remember. Yeah, Tennessee and Florida had many, at least far as college football is concerned, had many battles back in the day
Yes,
when I
it's
watched them a
the
lot. So yeah.
SEC. It's
Yep.
it's legit. So yeah, we talk about football, but let's transition to your role in tech. So you mentioned Narwhal
Yeah.
being an agency. I didn't realize they were an agency. I've seen I definitely have like a little one of those plushies. Actually, I think
Hmm.
I was at NgConf a couple years ago. We probably at the same time there. I spoke there.
Okay.
I did like a lunchtime workshop, and then I stood at the booth. But we probably crossed paths if you've been at Narwhal for a bit. Um,
Yeah. Well, I've been at Narwhal for the past year, but I've been around the
okay,
Angular
gotcha.
space and NgConf and everything. Yeah, for longer than that. But yeah, I probably saw you at NgConf because I've been at the last four of them, 4 or 5, something like that. I lost track, but
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
we
I do
have
remember GitHub being there.
we have people. Well, I guess Putin is though he's from Huntsville, and then Silicon Dark's in Atlanta. So if you're interested, definitely check out the conference. I'm not sure if they're doing a remote version of this year, but Zach does a really good job at conferences, so I'm sure whatever he does, it will be pretty good.
Mm.
So highly recommend. But I'm curious, can we just zoom back? I'm trying to. I would love
Yeah,
to learn like how you got into tech, how you got into engineering, and then like how you ended up getting in the NgRx project too as well. So start from
yeah.
whatever point you feel like you want to start from.
So way back in high school, no, but yeah, I got into tech and programming in high school, and I'm just going to admit it, like I'm an old man. So when I was in high school, QBasic was the programming language of choice that we had in our science class or in our what's I don't know what you call them extracurricular classes.
Yeah,
So we use QBasic, and I really enjoyed doing that. I think the app that I can remember building was a basketball. It was like a basketball game. So it was completely written in QBasic. It was basically like a stick man who I had a stick man and a uh, goal that went up and down, and it waited until you press the button on the keyboard to try to shoot the ball. And if the arc was correct and you timed it right, then it would, of course, go in the basket. So that was pretty much my first, I guess, legitimate program that I ever wrote. And so that was high school. And then I spent a lot of time with computers growing up just in general. So building computers, so I've been around them a lot, but programming really stuck with me as I went through high school and then college also. And after I left high school, went to college, and then didn't do much there the first time around. Um, came back to work, but I was still like doing projects on the side, like little side projects and everything. So one project I had like a while back programming, it was just another HTML. This was back when tables were hot. HTML, CSS, and a little bit of JavaScript. But it was like an audio site where you could go and listen to like streaming audio tracks. Um, so it's just a little homegrown site there. But along that way, I had done side projects, and I was kind of working through school, and I ended up um, going through like community college and going through getting my bachelor's degree, and then I got my first professional job as a PHP developer. So I was working actually out at Marshall Space Flight Center that we talked about earlier, building web apps for like their support systems. So it was like PHP, HTML, CSS, and just a sprinkling of JavaScript in there for that. So I worked there for a little while and moved there to other jobs where I had to get put my feet to the fire with jQuery and build some apps with that. Built some interactive apps with HTML, CSS, and jQuery, and then kind of moved on to other projects that were like across many different spans of technologies. Like I said, jQuery was one that I worked on. I did C# backend projects, and one project that I think is still active today is Sencha.js. I think they still
Not
make.
heard of that one.
Yeah, they
Is that
still
a
make.
framework?
Yeah, it was a framework that was, and I think it lived. It was around the same time AngularJS was around, but I was using that at the time to build the application that I was working on. So I used that for a little while, and eventually I got another job that I was working at the Army Game Studio, which I know probably many people don't know what Army Game Studio is, but
Is that
it's
that one game that came out in the early 2000s?
yeah, it's called America's Army.
Oh yeah, I played that.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I definitely played that because I was a Counter Strike player
Uh-huh.
back in high school and even like the end of middle school. And then when that came out, it was like, oh, free army game. Like I'm down
Yeah,
with this because I did Rainbow Six, I did Rogue Spear, and then that came out, and I was like, this is it. Like this is awesome. So you worked
yeah.
on that then?
Well, we worked on the web side of
Okay.
the Army Game Studio, because there's the Army has the developers that work on the game themselves, and then we worked on the web side of that. So we built the website that's still out there today. It's americasarmy.com.
The game still works too as well.
Yeah, I believe so.
Oh well. So I honestly have not thought about that. That's been like what 15 years? No, that's too long. Like 10, 12
Yeah,
years.
it's been at least 10, I think 10, 12 years. But yeah, we built the site to like expose the stats to the players of the game, so you can see what level you're on, what rank you're on. And we built some other things, some other web properties that basically promoted STEM and things that were um, tailored towards um, tailored towards STEM activities. But I also had the angle of, if you were interested in getting into the military, it
Yeah.
kind of subtly hinted you at, hey, if you like football, American football, and you like STEM, maybe you would like the Army too. So
Yeah, yeah. I mean, for more context, and maybe I this is the context I had because it was a game like just like now everybody plays Fortnite. It was a little more
mhm,
realistic than Fortnite, so like more of like Call of Duty before Call of Duty was the thing.
mhm,
But basically, first person shooter. You start off like even the training was like you start off in boot camp. It was like one of the first games I remember actually doing like a proper boot camp in a game, and then
mhm.
it's just an online shooter where you just do like army drills or you go take out terrorists. Um, but yeah, it was quite a piece of like I don't know if it'd be you call it propaganda or whatever, but the goal was to sell you on the army and then like recruit
Yeah,
you and like make that an interesting thing. And this is like yeah. Pretty intriguing like approach. I didn't know it was like still a thing, but yeah, hats off to the army. They're like still going strong then.
yeah. So we called ourselves like the marketing arm, the marketing arm of the Army, because we don't want to say like, oh, we help kids build bombs or anything like that. We weren't doing any of that stuff. We were trying to promote STEM education, so that's
So
what we did.
I used to mentor at a boot camp, and I used to joke with the boot camp students because they would be like, "Oh, I don't know if this is gonna work," and I was like, "Well, just hit run and see if it works." Like, we're not
Hmm.
shooting rockets, and like literally, in your case, you worked for the
Yes.
Marshall Space Center, and you worked for the marketing arm. So like in that case, like yeah, you kind of are shooting rockets.
Yeah,
So make sure you
yeah,
test
we
that
kind of
code.
were. Yep. So that application was PHP backend, AngularJS on the front end, and that was how I transitioned. As for working there, few of my friends that few friends that I met there that I still keep in touch with today. I'll mention them. Mike, Ryan, he's the one who helped me get involved with AngularJS. Luke Howell, who I'll be talking to like later today, actually, and other people, Brad, Sam, I'll mention them. We helped build that website, which was, like I said, PHP on the back end, AngularJS on the front end. And this was around about the time that AngularJS was being not sunsetted, but Angular, it was transitioning from AngularJS to Angular. So I got involved in the Angular ecosystem like
Is
pretty
that the
early
2.0
yeah,
transition? Okay.
it was called Angular 2 at the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I got in like during the alpha stages of that. So we started building. Other good thing about working there was we got to experiment a lot. So we were, definitely there in the Angular 2 alpha days, and we're building actual apps with it and trying to see what we could do with it. So that was how I got involved in the Angular ecosystem itself, and how I got involved in like the open source side of it was, of course, Angular's open source. So I wanted to get involved with like the Angular router because in Angular JS, like pretty much nobody used the one that was built in.
Yeah.
So I wanted to like contribute to making the one in Angular 2.0 a lot better. So I basically jumped in GitHub issues and tried to help people where I could, pull down sample repos and try to build things with it, and kind of learned it that way. And so if we fast forward that, I had gotten involved with the Angular router, and then we had built some things, like I said, built some things with America's Army internally. And one of them was basically an Angular version of Redux uh, um, that we had built there, but we couldn't open source it because those things just weren't in place at the time to do. So then NgRx comes along, and the founder of NgRx, his name's Rob Wormald. He used to work for Google on the Angular team. So he started the project basically as a weekend project for it, called it NgRx Store, was basically an Angular version of Redux that was popular in the React community. So he started the project of NgRx Store, and then of course um, we were looking at that project saying, okay, that's something we can use because it's open, we can contribute to because it's open source, as opposed to our version, which is internal and, will probably die when we leave because that's just how things go. So we started contributing to NgRx Store, and, Rob, we talked to Rob and he was like, hey, I want to contribute more to the project. And we're like, sure. So we ended up, I say me and Mike at the time were like the primary people working on the project, um, as far as like working on issues and interacting with people who were trying to use NgRx Store and uh, use it, apply to their projects. Of course, because Redux is like a state management
Yeah.
library for projects, and NgRx Store is the counterpart to that for Angular projects.
Yeah. So you were doing all this on your free time, or was this part of your day job?
Oh, this was all free time. Like I think it's been what's 20, I've been working on the project for going on 5 years, probably total, as far as like getting involved with the project up until now. Uh, it's all been free time. And we have had some people that, sponsor us as far as the NgRx org itself, that we do some things there, but or get some stuff there, but that goes towards like hosting and if people have travel expenses, or contributors to the project have travel, or our core contributor have expenses that they use that for. But as far as like development and everything, all that has been in free time and like nights and weekends. Of course, you mentioned before you're a dad. Like I'm a dad too, so trying to balance that. Uh, I've been doing better these days, but back then I was less balanced about how much time I spent
Yeah.
on
You have young kids, or are they
project.
older?
They're relatively young. They're 8, 5, and 2.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah,
Three. All right,
Yeah.
that's a handful.
So
Yeah.
yeah, when I started working on the project, I only had one. so so I had more time when I first started out, up and of course up until now, and a lot less time when you got three instead of one. So
Yeah, I got two, which is one's 6 and the other one's 2. I'm like thinking because they both have birthdays in 2 months. Um,
hmm
but same like you, like time is a very precious commodity when you have children. So I
hmm
tend to. I'm curious of how you approach getting open source contributions and work done and maintaining, because I tend to just do it during work hours. So like,
hmm
you get to the point where you just do your like. When I was engineering full time, because right now I'm a developer advocate, so I engineer part time. But when I was engineering full time, I got to the point where I would just ship features, and then you'd ship the same feature the same way, but somewhere else on the app. So you become
hmm
an expert. So I would get my job done in like 2 or 3 hours, in the day, and then like Reddit, Hacker News, Twitter, like I fill all the
hmm
time up somewhere else. And so instead, I started transitioning to like, hey, I'm going to work on something that to advance my skill set on the job.
hmm
And I tried to get the balance of like, okay, I'm going to offload my free time, open source contributions into my work time, and it's going to
hmm
justify it. I just chatted with Iffy just 30 minutes ago, chatting about this and how we sort of like do the balance. And I'm curious how you did a balancing act today of getting contributions.
Yeah. So today is actually uh, out of the ordinary, I would say, because of course, being Juneteenth, our company, as I mentioned before, Normal actually changed it so that today would be a holiday for the people that work in the U.S. So normally, I would be normally how I work on NgRx, or if I'm doing open source work these days, is I have to get up pretty early anyway. So once I get up and get everybody out of the house, then I have a little bit of buffer time to where I'll check on the project, check on issues, see if anybody's open PRs, since I checked yesterday, and check on that. So I get a little bit of time in the morning, and then maybe throughout the day, I'll just kind of glance at the project, see, because of course I can't turn my notifications off. Well, I guess I could, but then I don't want them to pile up. So I still get emails from GitHub when people file issues and things. So I may not respond to them immediately, which is, like I said, something I'm better about doing now as opposed to before, when I would like, oh, I gotta answer this now, or they
Yeah.
they're gonna think the project's dying. Um, but yeah, so it's a little like it's more sprinkled throughout the day. Like if I get take a break during lunch, I may check on, if I have some time, I'll check on it then, or if I have some time to work on something really quickly, I'll try to just hammer that out. And then of course there's like, I'm still going through the workday, so I don't take anything significant during the workday as far as working on it, because it's still a, I guess you call it a traditional open source project where we don't it's all contributors, and none of us technically get paid to work on the project
Yeah.
itself. So I still go through my normal workday. Then you get off the normal workday, take care of the family, make sure we get through, dinner and all the normal stuff. And then after the end of the day is over, then if my brain isn't fried by then, then I'll try to write some more code, or if I can crank out some documentation or something like that, then I'll work on it that way. So it's still, like I said, it's still a balance of, and then of course weekends, Fridays, I'll maybe stay up a little later to work on it, or sometime on
Yeah.
Saturday if I get a chance. But yeah, it's more, I fit it into my schedule more these days than it kind of dictating what I have to
Yeah.
do with it.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of documentation, blog posts on the weekends, because those are times where I wake up early, so I'm up before my kids get up, so I can have like my
hmm
own alone time, peacefulness.
hmm
So it's me first, and my son wakes up, so that's when I'm sort of reading through stuff, answering stuff, and like sort of naturally transitioning into the day. And then I tend to write code in the afternoon. So
hmm
usually I'm done by like 3 o'clock in the afternoon for work. So I'll try to crank through an hour of like testing, or try to like prototype a solution and sort of like hack at
Hmm.
something. And then when I do have the focus time, which is like sometimes in the middle of the night, sometimes in the middle of the day, it just depends on how busy work is. Then I'll focus as I've sort of like hacked away at solving problems. I'll focus and get it done. But you mentioned something about email notifications. Are you exclusively using email notifications for interactions through GitHub?
No, I've started using the as soon as the GitHub app came out, I basically
Okay,
downloaded it and like
nice.
this is going to replace my this is going to replace my emails that I get from people posting issues or pull requests and things. So I use more of the GitHub app now than I use email traditionally because I would just open the email and click the link to go to the mobile website. But yeah, the GitHub app itself is, at least for me, made that process easier of responding to people
Yeah.
that open issues.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, I was gonna ask. Yeah, there's a. I use the app pretty exclusively too as well. It's been super nice to just wake up and scroll through the app while I'm making coffee and see like what
Hmm.
needs to actually be addressed. I do like having things sit for a bit and have conversations happen with other contributors. So in case
Hmm.
someone doesn't like, we're trying to figure out linting right now for my project. Just like the next evolution of it, and I just let the conversation happen. And then because I happen to
Hmm.
be one of the, we have two maintainers on the project, so I'm half of the decisions that are made, or half of I guess the weight to basically say we're doing it. So I like to let people sort of like plead their case or grab an issue, and then I will jump in and be like, okay, well, thanks for grabbing this issue. Here's a solution, or put the solution there. Um,
Hmm.
because I know I don't have bandwidth to sort of do everything, so I try to like prep stuff so anybody can walk in and take it. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, definitely. I would say that's more of my role these days. Earlier in the project, we did a lot more hands-on coding and, like I said, working on the weekends, trying to put additional projects in the platform or fix bugs or things like that. But these days, I'm more of working to unblock people who are trying to contribute because
Yeah.
we have other contributors, other core contributors on the team besides myself. Uh, and I'll mention them as Alex and Mike. I mentioned Mike earlier, and Tim and Wes are the main people that contribute to it today. And then we still talk to Rob also, but yeah, these days I'm handling more, infrastructure things. If people get blocked on infrastructure and like contributors, uh, to try to help, people along in that area. So, like I said, most of the things that I do now are centered around unblocking people so that they can contribute and like outreach so that if people want to contribute to the project, they can and don't have any major hurdles in the way.
Wow. So yeah, I'm just transitioning us to basically showing and talking about the project. But when you mentioned contributors, like you weren't kidding. There's a lot of contributors on this project.
Yeah, yeah, I am on the Twitter grind, getting people to contribute to the project. But yeah,
Yeah.
those top, at least the top four people there are core, call them core
Core
members
team.
of the team. Yeah, core team. And Wes, another one of my counterparts at Narwhal, he's on the project too. And there's other people on the team also that uh, contribute more in ideas more than code. So
Yeah.
that's why I say I'm the primary maintainer of the project because I'm the one who's cutting releases and
Yeah.
having to still like nurture the project along to. But I'm not. I don't. That doesn't mean that I've given up the handle that I don't have to build everything or try to
Okay.
build everything myself.
Excellent. Yeah, that's I dream of days where I could start dictating and handing stuff to people and like watching stuff grow without me needing to touch everything and write every test.
Yep.
So that's a dream I have. But I'm curious, can you talk more about that Twitter grind? Like, what do you mean by? Are you actually out there like saying, "Hey, I got a contribution. Do you want to do it?"
Well, not as much these days, but if there are people who like use the project, I know that I reach out to people who use the project uh, or people who like a lot of people use the project but don't contribute, or they maybe don't have as much, I guess, confidence to contribute to the project. So some of the things that I try to do is if we have like work to be done, like there's always docs work to be done. There's always like some of these tasks to be done. So instead of like me trying to say, well, I'll just go and do that, some of the things I just open up issues for, and I'll like specifically tag them with like the first issue so that people can say that will they will go and open them. So if you go through the if we go to the issues page, and yeah, you can see issues page, and you click on open a new issue. Um, then this was something we did intentionally there. Like if you click on bug report, I would say.
Yep.
Um, so of course, we use the GitHub issue templates, and if you scroll down there to the bottom, uh, we have there you can file the bug, but if then we ask you, are you willing to submit a PR to fix this issue? So we are actively asking people if they want to
I
help
like
contribute
that.
to the project, and I put that part in there in parentheses after if you say yes, because some people say, yeah, I would like to contribute, but I don't know how. So we're trying to put that out there, like if you need help submitting a PR, then we will help you. Like I'm saying, we will spend some time to help you submit a PR to this project, whether it be for docs or code or test or whatever. So that's, like I said, we try to put that out there up front to help people, or to remove that barrier of people saying, well, I don't know how to use GitHub, or I don't know how to do this or that on Git. So I don't know how to use the command line with Git. So it was like, that's fine. There are a couple of ways you can contribute to the project without actually having to download the Git client and do it that way.
Nice. I did a call out in the chat too as well. I asked if anybody uses Angular or NgRx, and Pruton, who's our fellow our War Eagle in the chat. He had mentioned
Yep.
he wished he used it like 6 or 7 years ago because he's using local storage to manage state,
Okay.
which is a good first step.
Yeah.
But you learn, like I'm using local storage for my stuff, but my project's small, but I have
Hmm.
every intention to advance myself out of that once I start adding too much stuff to it. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, that's a good call out.
Yeah. I will say that
Yeah,
the yeah, I will say up front that the just because of NgRx being built on top of RxJS, that there's a learning curve to be had there.
yeah,
Uh, and there are certain applications for it where you would use it. Uh, but yeah, what we target, like I said, targeting managing state, and some apps just don't need it. But if you get to a certain point where you're managing a lot of state in different places, that's where you get into where you would start to use NGRX in your project. So that's always my pitch to people of at least in the Angular community, about whether you should use it or not, because it help what it does is it has a focus, and we try to make that the best, like focus that, and making it as best we can.
excellent. Um, Curious though, is there any examples that we could look at where an NGRX is being used? Like, do you have any to-do apps or stuff like that that sort of explore the
Yeah,
reactivity?
yeah, sure. So we have an example application that's in the repo itself, and
Where does that live?
it's under projects, and it's the example app. So this is our application that we use to our application that we have baked a lot of our best practices in for the project, uh, so that you can, if you're like new to using NGRX, you can look at this example app and see how it works, and you can run this app locally if you clone the project, and you can also, or you can run it locally. And we do have another place where you can see the application running. I'm just trying to bring it up here, or
This
like I said, you can bring it up
Stackblitz.
locally. Uh, that one should be up to date, but it depends on how This may be out of date. I'm pretty sure, but there's a small application that you can look at for just getting it running
Yeah.
on your local
Well, can
machine.
I
Or
what do I clone something? Because I'm happy to clone something and
yeah, sure.
share.
Either if you want to clone it, you can do
Is
that.
it the full project then?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Actually, I might even just I'll clone it.
yeah. If I have it here locally also. If you want me to just bring it up, but
Actually, if you have it, go ahead and share your screen, and then
okay.
that way no one has to watch me npm install.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so this is the, if you can see my browser screen,
Yep.
okay, here. This is the example app that I mentioned before, and it's like a book manager, a book collection, or bookstore application where you can log in. You see my collection of books. You can go and browse books. We'll search for Angular, and you can search for books there. You choose a book, add it to your collection. And then if you go back to my collection, you'll see the book that you've added there. And this is actually using the Google Books API
Yeah.
to list or for the search results. And like I said, it's a minimum, pretty minimum application, but it goes through a lot of the common use cases that you would have with building a reactive application, a reactive Angular application with NgRx. So you can log out, and one of the big features that we show for the project is the Redux dev tools. If I can bring it up here. So it has that same, like I said, it has that same integration with
Oh, like the time travel stuff.
yeah, the time traveling. Yep. So we show all your log of actions that you've done as you navigated through the application, and you can use the time traveling to go back. If I can jump here, if you'll let me click on it. So you can see what the state of the application was at that particular point in time, and jump back through once the books collections are loaded. You can go through it that way. So yeah, like I said, we have full integration with the Redux dev tools, and this is more a reference application that people can use
Yeah.
to go through the app if you're, like I said, haven't used it before.
Can you explain the power of having the time travel stuff, like for like debugging, for exception handling? Like this is something I used a lot in my previous employer. We had set up the Redux dev tools, and we are able to have exception handling and like
Mm-hmm.
for bug tracking. But can you explain that? I guess the power of that on from your perspective.
Yeah. So with that, when we use the Redux dev tools on other projects, it tracks all these states that happen. If you're using it for a lot of your parts of your application, then you can, like I said, track those states, and over time, there's states that your application was in over time. And what we used that in a previous application is that we would use that we used it in a couple of ways. For like local development, we could walk back how the application was running at any given point in time, and using the jump, or using the Redux dev tools to jump back to a certain point in time, or jump forward to a certain point in time of where the application was. Also, we used it for debugging, to where you could download a snapshot of the state of the application at a point in time, and like inspect, especially if an error occurred, you could inspect to see what the application state of the application was in at that point in time when that error happened. And we would use that as another debugging tool to give you some information about how to fix that issue. So it provided a lot of, it gives you more information that you wouldn't normally have as you're building an application, because normally your those things are isolated within smaller silos, or in the case of Angular, you're just using like regular services that don't have any knowledge of, they aren't bound to like a global state container that you can track. So that information, for a lot of people when they are new to it, or provides a lot of information if you're new to using the pattern.
Okay, very cool. And are we able to see how that sort of works under the hood? So, like, I don't know if this
Yeah,
example app has code that
let me
supports
see.
this, or
Yeah,
if it's
let me
probably in the
see if I
repo.
can. As far as the time traveling,
Yeah, I mean, I
or
want to wrap my brain around the how NgRx handles that. So, and the things like observables
okay,
as well.
yeah. So NgRx Store itself, I can bring up the NgRx Store itself. We use observables as the main API to implement the Redux pattern. So I will open up the repo here. And if I go under modules, store, source, the main thing that you're going to interact with in an NgRx application is the store.
Okay.
So the store is a service that you can inject anywhere in your Angular application that lets you do a couple of things. It lets you dispatch actions and lets you select state from the store. Uh, and for the example application, uh, when we do a search, we're following this cycle of when you go to this page, you enter a search, you dispatch an action to initiate the loading of that data, and then you handle that action to the actions that come out of those events to perform particular task. So the store itself is a service that lets you select state and dispatch actions. And then if we go into the state service, the part where those things come together is right here. So we are listening to like the latest reducer, which is listening for state changes and the actions so you have a given piece of state and a particular action that happens, and we are scanning those actions and those state changes to produce new states.
Okay.
Um, so and you can see, and as I mentioned before, you can see those in the dev tools. Oh, that was the extension itself. But the dev tools itself, what we're doing is we're taking the previous state in an action and reflecting a new state. So the store itself is a global way of tracking that. And then the dev tools, like I said, allow you to see that information and track that information.
So I'm curious if so I've also used Angular, and I actually stopped using Angular around the time you started using Angular. So I
Okay.
actually got into React around that time. But so I've got the context of Redux, and we have in the chat had mentioned around using local storage. So like knowing
Mm-hmm.
that Redux also, I don't know. Oh, you have the chat up. I didn't send a chat, but you found your way there. But I don't know if everybody has the quite has the context of like the power that we're sort of looking at, and sort of like the
Mm-hmm.
evolution of state management for front end focused applications. I'm curious
Right.
if Angular, are there multiple ways to handle state and store in Angular, or is NgRx like the way people are approaching it these days?
Yeah, so there are multiple ways to manage state within Angular. The Angular itself has, built or has services themselves that or services that you can build yourself that can use RxJS directly and use those in more of an isolated way.
Yeah.
So you can take a service and you can expose some observables on that service and use that to manage the state of a particular uh, feature or a particular page. within your application. So yeah, Angular has a mechanism to allow you to manage state as opposed to using like local storage. You could inject a service and manage that kind of in memory in that way. But like I said, those are isolated, smaller, I guess, in a smaller sample of state management as opposed to something more wide like Redux.
Okay. Yeah, and is there like a point where you would want to introduce NgRx into a project?
Mm-hmm.
Like, all right, should you start with a template or a boilerplate?
I'll see. I'll let you in on a little tip. A little tip here. Boilerplate is my trigger word. No,
Okay, apologies.
I'm just kidding. No, I'm just kidding. We, but yeah, we do have like over the life of the project, we have evolved some rules around when you would introduce NGRX into your project. We
Gotcha.
call them the Sherry principle, which is a person. Is actually the person that we named the principal as is a person we used to work with, or that I used to work with, and her name's Sherry. So we kind of model those after her. So yeah, there are rule or things that you would like these conditions that NgRx make or is a good fit for your project.
Yeah.
And the Sherry principle is noted here. As far as managing state, you have state that's accessed by many components and services. State that just persisted and hydrated from external storage. I think local storage is a good example of that, to where you could manage your local storage, but as far as hydrating it and bringing it back when your application comes up, you would expose that through NgRx, or state that's available when you're coming and leaving pages, or a state that needs to be managed by a side effect, or even if you have multiple places in your application that are or like that data is impacted from multiple places. And we usually use like authentication as a good example of that. You can log in and manage your authentication. Plenty of features are going to use it. You could have multiple ways to log in and or log out of your application to trigger or actions to trigger those events of logging out. So those would be these are the like I said, we came up with this rule or principle, and these are the things that you would consider as far as using it, because these things tend to come up more and more in larger scale Angular projects, and it helps you provide that process and pattern to use across teams where you have this consistent way of your building these features.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that you can't use, service. The other pattern that you would use in Angular is more or less a service with a subject pattern. And that's a good pattern, but in some cases, it only gets you so far. And this is kind of the next step of you have a lot of state in a lot of places where you want to use it there.
Yeah.
And
I really like this principle. I like that there's like a very good guideline and steps. And I get the pushback on having a boilerplate, because like you don't really need all those problems solved right off the bat. Like it's better to introduce the solutions when you have the problem, as opposed to creating a bunch of problems that you don't have yet.
We don't want to get into you had one problem and now you're using NgRx. Now you have two problems. We don't want to do that. So, but yeah, we do have. I'll go ahead and mention here while we're on here. The service with a subject pattern is, like I said, one that you can use, and we're adding an additional library to the platform that handles that situation also. So it gives you a more standardized way of using a service, or rather than using a service with a subject, something that works with the life cycle of your components and lets you still build these observable streams. So we're basically coming at it from both ends. If you need something locally to manage state, we got something for you there. If you need something that's more wide and shared, we're working on that too.
Excellent. So I'm curious if we could transition to the repo itself. Like this Open Source Friday is all about trying to have contributions and things to work on, on Friday. A lot of people, if you're a developer, tends to be a slower day. Like a lot of people still deploy on Fridays, but like people have, slowed down.
Who is deploying on Fridays?
People who write tests.
Oh, okay. As a rule, I don't deploy on Fridays,
Yeah.
and that's uh, more or less because I want my weekend to be nice and not worrisome about breaking somebody's app who tried to upgrade on a Friday. So
Yeah. Yeah, actually, so my side project that I actually do deploy on a Friday because I prepare myself for the weekend to pay attention to it. Because during the week it's very hard to pay attention to my side projects.
yeah,
So if I deploy on a Monday and then I have to take half a day to refix the stuff I broke, so I had the inverse, but mainly because it's open source and it's not my 100% priority. Um,
yeah.
but yeah, let's talk about contributing. And you had mentioned documentation. I'm curious if there's are there any sort of like big things or big pushes that NgRx is having right now that people can see if they want to contribute to?
Yeah, so either I can drive or you drive.
Yeah, why don't we you switch back and I'll share my screen.
Sure.
Excellent. And then that way I can sort of oop, I think this is the one. Uh I can help you. You can navigate me through if I was trying to
Okay.
contribute as well. So,
Yeah.
I think so far I think we just looked at the documentation and we got that far. So, you could either like explain the project and how it's sort of set up, or we could start talking about maybe some of the big pushes that you have for the project. So you decide on that end.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll talk about the project in general, and then we can drill into how
Okay.
people can contribute. Uh, so you just want me to talk about like the project structure,
Yeah,
or
I'd be
yeah,
curious
okay,
because like I see this word platform, and I've never
yes.
seen actually. A lot of times I see projects that will be like NgRx/NgRx.
Oh
So like,
yes,
what was
like
the decision on?
Angular/Angular. Yeah.
Yeah. So what was the decision for making it platform and not NgRx again?
Yeah, so the original repo for the project was just NgRx/store. And we had, well, it started out with NgRx Store, and then we expanded to include NgRx Effects, which is a library for handling side effects.
Okay.
And Router Store is integrating with Angular Router, and Entity was a separate library. Yeah, we have a lot of libraries here. Like these ones here are actually nightly build or builds that we run that we
Okay.
publish on every build of master
Okay.
or main, whichever one you prefer.
Yeah. You decide.
But yeah, you decide. But yeah, we started out with store. So then we have store that, or these other libraries depend on store. So we were coordinating like the releases between the different projects before on
Okay.
GitHub. So we ended up saying we're going to move everything to a monorepo. It would be easier for us to manage that way. And instead of doing the NgRx/NgRx thing, we're saying that NgRx is a platform or a framework. We're calling it a framework of libraries. So we're considered more of a platform that could contain many libraries that you can use in your projects.
Could you explain the nightly build as well and how that works?
Right. So every time we get PRs, when people open PRs and we go through, the process of review and approving each one of those, once the PR is merged, we're using Circle CI for that right now. But
Okay.
Circle CI, we have a job set up that only looks at when the master branch is built, or someone merged something into the master branch, and we go and build all of our projects, and then we publish them to GitHub repos for people who want to like the
Uh,
latest and greatest. If you want to go and get, because we're using versioning because we're using versioning so that of course, we don't break
yeah.
people's projects. But if you're like, I want to live on the bleeding edge, we publish those builds to GitHub repos, and then you can add those repos to your project
Okay.
directly.
I've seen a couple projects use things like Lerna. So is it basically
Mhm.
the same thing, but instead of you have a giant monorepo, you're actually creating separate repos?
Right. For the distribution, we're using a monorepo, and we're not using Lerna. We're using NX, which is a different uh, open source project that's managed by my job where I work. Uh,
Okay. So is it
that's my
not or I guess Narwhal then is your?
Yeah,
There we go.
Narwhal manages NX, and I work on that project also. So NX is another open source project, which is a dev tools for monorepos, or open source toolkit for monorepos.
Oh, someone's got
So
to
we
fix that
build.
failure.
Uh, nice. Um,
You've been exposed. You,
yeah, there you go.
someone, you got to
We'll
deploy
get
on a
that
Friday
fixed.
now.
Oh, under the gun to get that badge fixed.
Yeah.
But yeah, we were
And
okay.
we can finish talking through. I think where we left off is we were actually trying to figure out how to contribute to Narwhal itself. Or sorry, no, Narwhal. NgRx.
Got
And
Narwhal on the brain now. Yeah,
yeah,
contribute to
Narwhal came
NGX.
up and then we froze on that.
Okay.
So my thought is let's continue. We talked about the building. So that's where we were. NX actually was talking about the sort of building. We stopped at NX. And
Yeah.
that's what's actually the automation to build those projects. So uh, I'm curious,
Yeah.
could we finish the thought on how NX works and how the automation is hitting? Like, is that connected to Circle CI, or where in the
Yes.
process of the
So
PR does it actually ship?
yeah. So the if we go into the Circle CI folder there, .circle CI,
Yeah.
yeah, we can look at that and that config file there.
Yep.
So if we scroll down to the Circle CI has jobs and workflows, and we have workflows defined at the bottom of the
Yeah.
file. So each time, uh, go all the way down to the bottom of the file there.
Oop.
Yeah, we're
Like
using
really
a
the
lot
bottom.
of, yeah. As you can see, we're running a few automated tests and
Yeah.
making sure the project builds and everything. But yeah, if you scroll up a little bit until you get to the deploy job there, down
Uh,
a little further,
what line number is this? Oh, there we go. 427.
420, yeah, 427. So we use this deploy job so that anytime anyone merges something into the deploy job is defined up higher in the configuration file, but this job only runs when mergers are made into the master branch.
Yeah.
And so uh, what that deploy job does is we unarchive our cache and we run uh, a node TypeScript or a node script that's written in TypeScript that actually does the deployment of those packages. And if you want to look at that, what that job actually looks like, we can go
Yeah. How
look
do
at
I
that
get to
also.
the jobs? Well, first I gotta get back
Yeah,
to the top of this.
yeah. So just go back to the platform or go back to the root of the project. And if you look under the build directory there, we have a few scripts here that we use to run particular jobs. So we have the deploy build uh, script there. And what this script does, and we can look further as far as the tasks it does, but it does two things. It builds all the projects or the Circle CI job builds the projects, and then we use those build artifacts to deploy them to GitHub repos and also to deploy the latest version of the documentation to uh, next.ngrx.io, which people can see. Like I said, if you want to see the latest and greatest of what was successfully built on that branch, then you can use that. So if we go back one directory real quick to the tasks file, and we can show how that works. And if we scroll down, there is a job there that, yep, there's, if we scroll back up to, a little bit to 60, around 60, a little bit more, I believe. Yep, right here. So this is the publish to repo job to where we get each package that is defined in the repo,
Yeah.
and we're using a convention of whatever the package name dash builds. So we get each project and we say this is where the build artifacts for that project is. This is where we're going to publish it, and then we use the prepare and publish function to do the rest of the work. And we can scroll down to see where the prepare and publish part of it is. So what we do with the prepare and publish is we get who the committer of that PR was, and we create a temporary directory, and we copy those build artifacts into that directory, and we make a commit.
Gotcha.
And then we push well, we only pull the latest commit from the current build repo, and then we take a copy of the build artifacts and push the latest build artifacts to that repo for each one of the projects. So every time someone merges in a PR, we do the builds so that I believe we're up to 7 packages now. You can go and get each one of those, the latest of what's on master as far as each one of those packages go.
Okay. How old is this whole scripting process of identifying builds and then creating PRs for this and stuff?
So most of it is like custom tooling to where we're looking at the project. Each project has a certain structure and has a certain build file in it. So we're currently looking at that to determine which projects need to be built and shipped. But because we're going, I said, go back to NX again. We can use that more you have to go back there, but I was just saying it gives us project information that we can use to do that more efficiently, as opposed to looking at like the directory structure.
Okay. I'm curious if y'all looked into GitHub Actions before.
I have not looked into them extensively. I think I definitely signed up for the beta a while back, but haven't looked at trying to see what the configuration would be to do that.
Yeah, so it seems very similar. So I have a project that I've been working on. I mentioned this earlier in the stream with Iffy, which is called Open Sauce, and it's not as complicated as Narwhal or NX rather, or even like NgRx's setup, because it's a much smaller project. But I'm actually I don't sync the actual builds. I'm syncing the issues between repos. Okay. So I have this repo, which is it actually lives here under open source and then goals template. So anybody who creates a new repo based on this template then also brings the actions along for the ride. And then this action itself is supposed to, for example, this one syncs. This one's a little simpler actually, because I'm using another action that fork bacon, which basically it's meant to, every time you fork a project, it keeps your the main branch up to date. So this is every day at 2 a.m. UTC. My main branch is going to be updated every day, so that way I don't have to worry about, hey, new changes. I'm not tracking them, but I want to contribute to the project. And I think a lot of times people will just do they'll delete the repo and then fork it again, so that way they get the latest without needing to fetch origin and then push back up to their branch. So I say that
you're using more of a distributed approach, but you're syncing everything up automatically.
Yeah, automatically, and it's built with actions, and the fact that this action can go along for the ride. No one has to sign up for actions. It's already built into the product now. It was beta before, but the beauty of this is I have 2 different repos that are now staying in sync with each other, and they don't need to even know anything about each other. I just know that it actually works. So I bring that up because it seems like your scripts probably predate actions. So
yes.
I wouldn't recommend you start deleting stuff and switching over by any means. But
I just started while you were going through. No,
you started deleting. I can hear you clicking away in your keyboard.
There you go.
Excellent. Yeah, but I bring that up because the understand the concept of this build and the scripting.
Hmm.
I love having like ideas of automation. Um, and like if you have one repo that's doing something the one way, like I imagine the way you're doing, well, NX exists because the way that Narwhal was doing it, they probably ended up sharing that to other projects like NgRx. Um, so I think what I'm getting at is this, there's a lot of solved problems, and I think a lot of people have approached solving it themselves and then finding out that
Hmm.
it's hard to maintain something like this when you could just actually follow Brandon and follow NgRx and see how they're doing it and just copy and paste that like crazy. Hopefully, I don't know.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, that, like I said, that was hand rolled, and I would definitely, if like I said, the monorepo makes coordinating that simpler. But yeah,
Yeah.
if I was using a multi-repo approach, then I would definitely look at more coordination and coordination between the repos, because we were doing that before and it was a pain. So
Well, excellent. Um, so I guess I wanted to transition us to. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to find out how our faces are going to get back on the screen.
okay.
That was yeah. I guess this is the limitation of me not showing hide video panel. No. Anyway, if anybody in the chat knows how to use Zoom, please let me know. Because as soon as
But yeah,
we,
we can. I
yeah,
can talk about how, at least from my documentation page, you
yeah,
can easily contribute there.
okay,
So if you go to ngrx.io, the documentation site itself. Yep. So if you click on the docs link there at the top.
yep,
So yeah, on the each page right now has a small pencil, if you see there at the top right corner of the page. And what that does is, if you actually want to make a change to this project, well, yeah, I guess you have to have a
yeah,
fork
fork,
of it. But yeah, if you want to make a change to the actual document, and it takes you directly to the page and like the content that you can edit directly here. So you don't
yeah,
have to have any GitHub, or we're using like the GitHub links and pointing to the files to let you be able to edit directly there. And if you like, it's like if you want to just do a one-liner change, or you're like correcting some grammar and you want to open a PR that way, that's a definitely an easy way to contribute in that way. If it, like I said, if it's not um, code, but there could be places in code where you can do that too. But at least straight from our documentation page, we try to provide less friction for you to contribute in that way.
yeah. Are there any like clear areas that where the documentation is lacking that maybe people can jump into? Because like I mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm a brand new like NGRX user, I
Mm-hmm.
might want to start using NGRX today. Like I've got a problem I want to solve. I've understand observable now. It's like I want to basically, or I want to have time travel debugging as part of my project. Like,
Yep.
is there some clear areas in the documentation where people can focus on maybe solving that problem for their app, but also solving that problem for the docs at the same time?
Yes, the documentation pages themselves always accepting contributions for documentation. In the issues, I also, like I mentioned before, have some issues there that are long-standing issues for documentation, ones that I haven't broken up specifically, but you can probably look for
Is it?
them, yeah, either under the docs label, or probably if you see docs label and me as the author, then you'll see we do have documentation ones here that are people can use these as guides for, like, yeah, I have one there, docs rewrite guides. That's one that's been a long running one. And so on this page,
Oh wow, this is
like we
amazing.
have
39
ones that
comments.
are, yeah, that one took a little while to like hammer out some of the details for that one. But yeah, these are just some of the ones that we've like specifically tagged. But the docs probably rewrite guides is the one that I guess the longest running one that I have put out there to that people can contribute to as far as just areas that we are always looking to improve. Um, and you can see like the PRs that have come along the way where other people have written updates and or I have written some of those guides myself, and we've had conversations about what things will be good to update or what things areas people can contribute to.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, I think that's like a great thing to think about because I think one thing that I talk about a lot is the contributing MD and like actually, let me turn my second camera off because I think we're gonna be good to go. I was worried that my power was gonna shut off again, but it seems to be fine. Um, but yeah, the one thing that I like to talk to people about, like if you're gonna contribute or if you're gonna onboard to doing stuff, try to make it better for the next person that comes through. So if you're gonna use NgRx today, try to find out places where you can improve the documentation, where you had to sort of struggle through and figure out like, I wish this was better docs. One of my biggest gripes is like whenever someone like uses something I wrote and then they're like, hey, this is broken. And I'm like, well, could you at least just open an issue? Like, I don't, what do you want me to do? You want me to like pair program with you, or you just want me to fix it, turn it around?
The standard response is accepting PRs. No.
Well, I saw your label
People,
too as well, where it said accepting PRs, which I like that. I like that like a actual call out, which is like I think good first issue is great, but there's like expectation that this will be a new contributor on the project. Accepting PRs could be it's like good first issue, but then some. So like you expect, I guess you might be expecting someone with some expertise or even some experience with the project. Is that the assumption?
the good first issue is like you may have never contributed to anything before. You may not even know like how to, and like I said, we can help you walk through that process for a good first issue. And those are specifically for first time contributors. Like if someone who comes along says, I'll take that one, and they're already a contributor, then we're like, okay, we'll just leave that one there because we want somebody who hasn't done it before, hasn't contributed before to actually take that one. So that one is like a clear line of where that one is. And the accepting PRs one is, we could do this one, or if the community wants to pick it up, then, they're saying this is a thing that we could have. And if you want to help contribute to it, or if you're like a recurring contributor, then we're saying that you can come and, take that one
Yeah.
and add your name to either add your name to the list or further your name up the ranks.
Yeah, I honestly I really like that because I've been doing a lot of trying to encourage other people to contribute to the stuff I do. I write some blog posts and say like, hey, here's where the future of the project's going. Like, if you want to come along for the ride, here's the steps to do it. I created a thing called the triage team as well, which is something I took from RxJS, where if you want to onboard onto a project, but you don't really know exactly where to start or how to actually like work with like the scripting or the builds and stuff like that, but you can label issues like, or you can actually just debug. Like you can actually just use the library or the product or whatever it is, and then this like actually open up issues and like point out edge cases of like, hey, I was standing on one knee and I had two laptops open. One had Linux and like stuff broke. Like, okay, document that. Tell me the versions. Tell me exactly how that sort of came to being, because most of my development's actually on the Mac. I don't really touch Linux. I don't touch Firefox because I just forget. So like if it's a web like a web UI thing, like I'm finding lots of CSS bugs in Firefox that I have to change the way I approach CSS. But that's good. It's good to actually have that sort of exposure, but I just don't constantly think about, like I have this giant beefy Windows PC I'm not even using for the stream, which I should have apparently. I would probably wouldn't have had it die on me. But like I don't do enough Windows stuff to be able to do that, but I get a lot of contributions for people on Windows and Linux and stuff like that. So I don't have to like have two laptops open at the same time. So I encourage all the listeners and all the people who watch this after the fact, like please like consider yourself like a member of the triage team just by default. Like if you're new to the project, try things out, read the documentation. If something is wrong, like, and this is like above misspelling, like typos, because I think we get a lot of typos, and that's fine. But
Hmm.
like, if you don't understand like the words or the verbiage, like we spent the earlier part of the chat talking about college football, like if there's an analogy about college football and you're like, this is missing me, like you should let the maintainer know and be like, hey, could
Yeah.
you like change this so the concept is actually understandable to me, like, somewhere else in the
Hmm.
US or another country. So that's my thought.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Try to make the project itself and from like code to documentation to contributing, make that as accessible as possible so that uh, people aren't there. Like there are enough barriers as it is, people that have in their own brains as far as contributing goes. So we don't want to add anything else that would make that harder or mentally harder to do. See, I'm
Yeah.
always for trying to meet people where they are, as far as contributing and or reaching out to people who like openly use the project and say, hey, that would be a great PR if you wanted to, if you wanted to come add some of that back, or you got some good ideas to share. So I always try to encourage people to contribute to our project or even any other project, or eventually start their own project and kind of uh, if ours was a launching point for someone else, then I consider that a win.
Yeah. Awesome. So hopefully we got a good introduction to NgRx. I was gonna say narwhal again. the the confusing of the names and the freezing on that. It's just it's
Yeah.
irony. But I wanted to transition us to actual stars, if you don't mind. And I'd
Okay.
mentioned this. I mentioned this in the doc, but we didn't actually specifically call this out or chat about this before. Um, but I'm curious if I bring up Brandon Roberts. Um, curious if you have any
Uh-oh.
stars.
I'm have some. Hey, look at that. Yeah, I don't probably don't use this as much as I should, but this last one here, or at least the first one in the list there, was one that was pointed out to me recently.
Okay,
The Black Speakers in Tech, which I saw that on Twitter, um,
nice. I'm
about
gonna give that
and
quick star.
yeah, somebody had actually added me at some point in time. I wasn't even aware of it. Added me to the list, which shout out to that person. But yeah,
Oh, I wonder if I'm here. No, I didn't make the
it's
list. Oh man.
there you
All
go.
right, PR incoming.
There you go.
But I do see a lot of familiar names on this though, as well.
Hmm.
Very cool. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'm
So,
really curious around this Twitch Go.
oh, okay. So that one is. I have been on this quest to use a Chromebook uh, for for a lot of my computing. Um, and this project was a way to run a Twitch stream on your Chromebook, because on your Chromebook you can install Linux apps, but you can't access like the hardware directly
Yeah,
through the Linux container. So you can't run like OBS natively that way.
yeah.
So this was a way that a project I thought was pretty cool, that you could uh, attempt to do a Twitch stream directly from your Chromebook. So I tried it out, and it worked.
Oh,
It
really?
worked.
Okay.
Yeah, it did work. It wasn't great, but it was a step in the right direction for someone who like lives inside of that environment, who wants to like try doing an actual stream from there.
What's the intention for using a Chromebook for your main editing? And
Yeah, so I love the web, and if I could do most of the things that I normally do on the web, I would choose that direction. And a Chromebook makes that pretty straightforward. And the other part of it is that it gives me the Linux parts that I want, and the other Linux parts, it tucks away the Linux parts that I don't want. Like
okay.
I don't want to fiddle with desktop settings and tweaking audio configuration and all that kind of stuff. So a Chromebook was an easy way for me to basically get on the web whenever I needed to, and to like release my brain from constantly having to tinker and tweak things.
Okay, fair enough. But yeah, yeah, I would never even think that you could do everything you could do with the Chromebook. Like even the that playground that we pulled up, what was that? Stack Blitz?
Hmm.
Um like is that also
Yeah, StackBlitz is all, yep, all
Chromebook
web based.
friendly? Yeah,
Yeah,
online code editor.
yep. StackBlitz is it's like it's become. They have a lot of different projects here, but yes, for Angular applications, it's pretty much how you create your.
Like
How we
sandboxes.
use it to, yeah, we use it to create. Yeah, it's like Code Sandbox. We use it to create. If someone files an issue, and we use this to create like reproductions. So we
Gotcha.
have like a canned StackBlitz that already has the NgRx packages installed, and you can fork that stack blitz, and then it make it your own using, you can fork it to your, they you can log in with GitHub and fork it that way, and tweak the starter stack blitz, and then submit that with your issue to say, this is the issue I'm seeing, here's an actual reproduction that kind of helps us out if we need to actually do something about it or not, or tell someone that that's kind of the way it works, so we're not going to, thank you for the issue, we may not fix it. uh, so yeah, definitely a way to spin up an Angular project, or even other Angular React or other projects quickly, and edit them online, or edit them, everything you can do in the browser.
Very cool. Yeah. And I don't know if I have I just spent some time talking about my stars with Iffy before this call, but I can
Hmm.
scroll further down. And okay, cool. Yeah, so here's one I do want to talk about, and I talked about those ones already. But use shopping cart is actually
Hmm.
something I want to try out. So we connected through Twitter because I had a call out for people who wanted me to sponsor them. I was just looking for Black maintainers, and
Yep.
you responded. Nick actually responded as well, and Nick actually
Hmm.
maintains a project called Use Shopping Cart, which is kind of like a wrapper around the Stripe API, um,
Hmm.
and it gives you a shopping cart experience, and it's open source, and it actually solves a problem I'm looking to solve eventually. I haven't had a
Okay.
chance to actually use it, but I would not have actually ran into it if it wasn't for me having a call out for sponsors. So I highly recommend check the use shopping cart out. I haven't used it myself, but I will hopefully soon. And I just want to give a call
Hmm.
out to the GitHub sponsors as well.
Yeah.
So you see, I'm here. Actually, should we do the? Should show yours too as well.
Yep.
So there we go. You've got. Oh, you have 20 sponsors. Oh wait, no, you're almost there.
Yep. Almost there.
18. Yeah, last time I checked, it was less, but I don't remember what it was. But yeah, definitely less. But I see a lot of familiar faces on here too as well. Um,
Yep.
you've got the CEO of GitHub sponsoring you.
There you go. I saw that, so I was like, huh, okay. Any contributions, I will gladly accept. And like I said, I'm going to use it to do more open source and pay it forward to others. So
Yeah, well, I hope.
definitely.
I mean, I hope it goes a long way too as well because I think there's like, uh, I have a whole talk that I'm giving next in a couple hours at June Team Conf, but it's
Hmm.
around like the value of sponsorship because a lot of people will give you mentorship, but
Yeah.
sponsorship is like the next level above that. And I think if people actually put like, it's not even about money too. It's like the investment.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
actually putting your time in to invest in someone. So when it comes to like, I don't know anything about Angular. I don't know anything about like modern Angular because I know like
Hmm.
Angular JS, but like if someone gave me the time and said, "Hey, this is the value of using the platform," like if I was working on a team, like I would be so much further. Like I'm pretty sure I can figure it out at this point. I've do a lot of JavaScript, but what I'm getting at
Yeah.
is like there's so many other people out there that could use just proper sponsorship, like people actually coding up, like coming up aside alongside them and actually giving them the time of day to like show them like the
Hmm.
ropes and how to do that. So I'm a big fan of the GitHub sponsors for using it in that realm. I know we've used it a lot for like elevating people who are already doing stuff, but there are a lot of people who are like on the edge of like
Yeah.
going to Like we just chat. Like again, I'm going to bring up Iffy because we had a longer conversation. It's more recent, but he was on the verge of actually stopping his open source project,
Oh, really?
and then somebody sponsored him, and it gave him
Okay.
like basically the interest. Like I'm not just coding this for myself, like a little side
Hmm.
project taking up my nights and weekends. Like actually somebody's going to use this, so I will put my time into it if someone uses this thing. But like it's this weird awareness thing that if you don't know about it, you're not going to use it. So how do you get people to use it? Do you throw it up on GitHub, throw it up on npm, and then hope for the best? And there's like a lot of different opportunities for people to do to get exposure around with the work they do.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, I was doing the nights and weekends work, before the sponsorship thing came up. And like I said, it's never been about the money for me, but it's I appreciate that people have chosen to sponsor me and to continue those efforts along the way. So hopefully, well, I'm not saying hopefully, I will, look out for other people to sponsor also, so that we can, like I said,
Yeah, pay it
lift each
forward.
other, yeah, lift each other up. So
Yeah, I'm a big fan, and I appreciate you taking the time. Apologies on the randomness of the the Zoom. Basically, actually, my Mac is completely just dying. Um,
no,
I think it's
no
what it is.
worries.
The dongle itself, I think, is no longer producing power anymore, so I had to plug it straight in. So if anybody wants to know how I troubleshooted, that's how I did it. But
Yeah,
excellent.
cool.
But yeah, chat. Thanks for sticking around. Most of you, I know some of us got like basically aborted once he saw the black screen. Or I'm not even sure if it was just. I'm not sure if it cut out and no one was seeing it because I'm powering it from here. But I'll look at the video later and try to figure it out. Brandon, definitely keep in touch, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of the work you're putting out. And I'm
Appreciate
looking
it.
forward to the chat contributing back to as well. So it is Open
Yeah,
Source
that's
Friday.
right. Accepting PRs,
Yes.
come contribute. I will be always ready for contributors. So if
Yep.
you're contributing, you're probably going to see my face anyway.
Sounds good. All right, everybody. Happy hacking.